Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Dimitri Moraitis. First, check out Brainsupreme if you're looking to start your microdosing journey with the highest quality ingredients available. Visit their website using the link right in the description, and you're going to get 15% off your entire order. Also, watch the Forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana. That's available on Tubi and multiple streaming platforms. It's a great way to help support Forbidden Knowledge News and our upcoming projects. Also, download our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker if you listen through any podcast platform. We are also booking guests for March. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Dimitri Moraitis. He is co-founder of the 7 Spiritual Arts program, where students learn effective meditation and 7 mystical arts to accelerate their spiritual growth. Dimitri, welcome. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to getting into our discussion today. We're going to talk about some of the teachings and spiritual modalities that you offer at the 7 Spiritual Arts program, as well as I'd love to get your insights into the hidden world beyond our perception and the intelligences that may influence or even guide us along our path. And that opens plenty of doorways that we can get into. Before we do, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what really led you down your path.
Okay. Well, I definitely had a spiritual awakening. I originally was pursuing a whole different life and career, and actually movies and entertainment. I was doing that in my early 20s, and it was actually going quite well. And I came to California because, that's where you make movies, right?
Right.
I was born in Denver and raised in the Midwest. And I didn't know what metaphysics was, but I was having what I called at the time these inspirational moments. I was just in a different, beautiful state of consciousness, and it kind of came by itself. It left by itself, and they got so intense that I had a profound awakening. I call it my Saul in the Road to Damascus moment. But even then, I didn't have a name for it right away. Someone said, "Oh, you've had a religious experience." I said, "I don't know. It didn't quite feel like that." And then when I heard the word metaphysics, then all the bells went on. And fortunately, in Southern California, there's a lot of outlets to kind of explore that. And about
And
a
what
year,
time period was it when this started
oh
to
my
occur for you?
I've been around for a little while. I've been studying this for 40 years now and
Oh,
teaching.
right.
So
Excellent.
I'm not a new kid on the block. I don't
Yeah.
want to tell you who was president of the United States when this happened.
All good.
But I was
Fair
in my
enough.
20s. I was in my 20s, right?
Hmm.
And the thing is, I had a very comfortable life in Chicago, and I had great friends and great family. I could easily have made a good life there for myself. But I had this yearning to do more. And I know it sounds corny now, follow your bliss, but it really is important because when you get that real feeling, and it's not like a one night thing, it's just something that's there, you've got to pursue it. It's taking you maybe outside the comfort zone a little bit, but it led me to Los Angeles. Now, if I hadn't have gone there, it wouldn't have led me to all these other things that eventually led to the journey I'm on now. But about a year after my awakening, I was at a dinner party, and this woman was leading a meditation. First time I meditated. I felt like it was an ancient door opening up. And then I was talking with her afterwards, and I started pouring my heart out because, again, I couldn't understand what, these experiences were. And she, not only did she give great language to it, to understand it, I realized she had been having even more than I was having these experiences. So I realized that night she was my teacher. Barbara Martin were the co-founders of the nonprofit together. She's a generation older than me. She just unfortunately passed this last year, but she's part of the greatest generation. As a matter of fact, her oldest brother fought with Patton's Third Army in Europe. You know, and right away, not only did we get intense into the spiritual training, but we both realized we love to write. And she realized it before I did, but she was starting to train me to eventually carry on the tradition. So we follow that teacher student to teacher student. She had a great teacher herself years ago before that, and it kind of moved like that. At a certain point, she taught a lot from inspiration. Her clairvoyance was off the charts. She is called the Mozart of metaphysics. But we said we got to organize everything. And that's what started the formal teachings, the books. We just, recently released our third edition of Change Your Life, our flagship book. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit today because it offers the foundational meditation technique. Anybody interested in metaphysics, if meditation isn't already part of your practice in a regular way, it really needs to be, because that's the time that you get in touch with the inner you. And when you can get in touch with the inner you can get in touch with the inner worlds, right? It all kind of follows suit there. And meditation is the fundamental key. I've been doing the light meditation for 40 years, and it's only getting better now. And then we kind of moved along. And yes, now the 7 spiritual arts, one of the teachings you organized is we took 7 key mystical arts and organized them into comprehensive teachings. We're writing books around them. And just like the 7 liberal arts, we train in that to prepare the mind for the intellectual rigors of life, so that whatever's going on in your life, you have the mental tools to handle that. The 7 spiritual arts gives you the spiritual tools so that as the dynamics and dramas of life come up, you're equipped. You do not feel like a victim, right? Many times something bad happens, we feel victimized. That's the wrong approach. As Barbara would say, do you want to be the master or the victim of your life? But it's not always easy being the master. Sometimes it takes energy to exert that. And if you have the spiritual core, you can do that.
Excellent. Well, great introduction. I like to start in the deeper end of the spiritual waters, especially with guests who have, like yourself, been in this space for a very long time and have been studying these metaphysical and esoteric topics. The question that I'd like to start out with, and we can work our way back from there, is what is the purpose of this reality? What are we doing here? Now more than ever in our recent past, people are starting to become more curious about our reality, and that there may even be life beyond anything that we can perceive in this reality that may influence us and have effects on our lives. The biggest question for me is, what is this existence about? Because of the recent confusion and a lot of the turmoil that we've collectively experienced over the past few years, there's been a lot of theories circulating, a lot of re-emerging concepts, a lot of re-emerging spiritual beliefs. And I think it's a great thing. But also, I think it can be a very negative thing if people get trapped in some of those spaces that lead them into darker places and darker perceptions of our reality. And I've come to learn that our perception has a great deal to do with forming our reality. Based on your experience and your perception, what are we doing here?
Wow, that's like an encyclopedia, not even a book, right?
As much as we can get to, at least.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Mm.
Well, we do live in extraordinary times because no question, and I'm kind of honoring Barbara right now with a lot of things because she has taught this long before these topics were popular. I mean, to do a podcast like this, even X amount of years ago, would have been unthinkable, right? So already we see that the awareness, the desire is out there. So it's a we call it a spiritual renaissance
Mm.
that people are now the the inner part of them. See, the big thing we have to realize, and maybe this is a way to angle what you're saying here, is as much as we think we are not our body. Okay, we are a soul inhabiting our body. The core of who we are is not physical at all. We inhabit the body literally like we go into our car and we drive it. We are not our car when we're sitting in the car driving. We are still us, but we're in the car moving around. Now, the teachings that are really are reemerging. This is an ancient tradition. The difference today from then is in the ancient days, let's say ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, the mystical schools, the mystery schools, they were honored parts of society. They were revered and recognized as kind of like those for the elite schools. Today we may say, gosh, if you're going to be a Navy SEAL or something like that, that's a pretty elite status to reach. It takes a lot of training. In the ancient, you would say being a mystic in one of these schools was that way. Right now, many would say we're living in a very materialistic world, but really all we're saying is the materialism is a perception. So if I say to myself, yeah, what I can see with my physical eyes, we're a bunch of atoms bouncing around the universe. It's just physical energy going this way and that way. It's all happening random. That's a perception. And that's what's called the material consciousness. Now, the East Indian philosophies, the Vedantas and the Upanishads and the Vedas had this beautiful philosophy on this, which goes back God knows how many centuries. That when you interpret the world you're in right now, just by the physical aspect of it, your perception of that is an illusion. Now, they're not saying the world is an illusion. But they're saying if you look at this narrow band of the full spectrum of life, the physical, and say that's all there is, there's nothing else, and you define your life that way, that's an illusion. And they called that illusion the world of Maya. Literally like being sort of hypnotized or sort of being asleep.
Mm.
Right? So the goal is when that inner part of you starts to say, no, that's not who you are, and it starts to waken up, as anybody I'm sure listening to your program has had their spiritual awakening, something has stirred in them already to say, there's got to be something more than just like what's around me right now. I may not know, like you say, what it is. We are searching and seeking, but it's definitely there. Now, the journey to do that is first to discover who we are. The ancient Greeks at the thing, they said, know thyself. It was not the little petty self that we know so well, the narcissistic self. It was the real self, the soul. So once you get in touch with the immortal you, then you become, they called it the Atmanic state. You have the awakening, and that leads to the eventual, what was termed enlightenment, where you become aware of ultimate reality behind everything. And they gave that the term Brahman. Whether if you're doing Buddhism, it would be nirvana. There's different terminologies. If you study the Tao, it's returning to the Tao. This is the source of life on every dimension of life, physical and spiritual. Everything springs from here. We're part of it right now, even though we are part of the creative expression right now as well. And the goal is to reconnect. And they had a beautiful image of that when you reach that state, it's like a drop going back to the ocean of life. And that brings in this idea of, not only bliss, but a full sense of your purpose is there, not as a belief, but as a operating functional process. And in that world, in that scenario, Earth, this planet of ours, from the perspective spiritually, is a school. we come to this earth, and this opens up other doors, like the idea of reincarnation, that we come to this earth multiple times. And each lifetime is sort of like a grade in school. And the soul, all your experiences, everything going on in your life right now, good, bad, or indifferent, is part of your spiritual training. And what becomes important is not what's going on in your life, but how are you handling what's going on in your life? Why did that thing push your button so bad? And that one didn't even bother you. That's not an issue with you. This is. So we look at our weaknesses to strengthen them because they help us to. Earth is a school, meaning we're here to spiritually evolve. We're here to grow our soul so that we can break. Now, the initial phase of getting out of the material consciousness is called the transcendent experience, where you transcend the material consciousness of things. It's a little bit like if you look at the entire electromagnetic spectrum, you say, oh, no, there's just the visible light. Nothing else exists. And then somehow you become aware, oh my God, this spectrum is much, much more broader than I ever imagined. You are transcending your previous perception of things. And that, no one can force that on another person. No one can debate that to another person. You know, we have to have that experience for ourselves. I didn't initiate my awakening. It happened to me. I can't say, hey, you've got to have this awakening now so you can see what I see. It's got to happen there. But then once it's there, you can share with others because, oh, okay, we're now, in our terminology, we call ourselves brothers and sisters in light because we are all kind of on the same journey, but we're all at our own pace. Just like grades in school are different levels in the same building, not everybody on earth is in the same place, evolutionary-wise. They're all equally valuable, but we're not all at the same evolutionary level. So we have to respect where everybody is at that level. But I would say that to round out this for a moment, if you've had your spiritual awakening, which I'm sure your audience has had, that is not an accident. That's the divine knocking on your door, and you need to do everything in your power to make that a higher priority in your life. And I may add one last thing, the cautionary note that you brought out too, be discerning. Not everything labeled spiritual or this is of equal value. And yes, like you say, just like in any field of endeavor, there are con people out there. There's misguided souls that have no idea what they're talking about, and they pretend like they do. So you have to use your common sense. Your good knowledge is like, okay, before I accept this idea, let me entertain it. Let me even put it to practice in my life, and then I'll decide if it's valuable for me. And that will help you avoid a lot of those rabbit holes that you were talking about.
Right. And for myself and many others, and I'm sure yourself, there have been many different levels or layers of your spiritual awakening. I have new awakenings and epiphanies and realizations and understandings almost every day. And sometimes so profound, my perception of reality completely shifts and changes. And I can focus on different things, and it's usually for the better, especially ever since I connected with some of the information that was for me and what I consider my higher self throughout my journey. But for me, it was also this communication, this interaction back and forth with whatever you want to call the intelligence that surrounds us at all times, this information field, whether you want to call it God, source, your higher self, the Akashic records. There's so many different terms that we could use, but for me, this communication was initiated after I showed a desire to understand more about myself and really push myself forward on my spiritual journey. And it took place through meditation, psychedelics, different types of experiences and implementations of some of the lessons that were being learned. But it was also synchronicities and different subtle types of communication, not only that I'd received during my experiences, but after, when I would be in my waking life, when I'd be having everyday experiences, there would be these cues, these subtle things that, like I said, these synchronistic moments that would either let me know that I was on the right path or maybe I'm not doing something correctly, an answer to something I've been seeking. And it is ongoing to this point. But once it's recognized, it can be honed in on. And I think it becomes more powerful as you nurture that awareness of it.
Well, again, you're hitting on another major topics here. Um, the simple, or maybe a way to angle that again, like we're not doing this alone. Okay, if Earth is a schoolhouse, well, you need teachers, right? Now, some of those teachers may be physically based, but the key ones are not. Now, the problem is when you start talking about things like, angelic beings and archangels, and you start to think, well, those are supernatural. That's not, but the best way to think of it is the natural world is not just the material world. For example, angels are as much a part of the flowers and, of nature as the flowers and trees. They're just operating on non-physical dimensions. But they have also reached higher states of awareness than you and I have yet reached. So that's what makes them, this is not like a peer exchange. They're equally, they're sharing things. They're helping us in a way that we cannot, do ourselves, which is part of what they call the evolutionary chain that links all the different facets of the evolutionary life together. In the same way, for example, we, let's say if we have animals and pets and we love them, well, they're in a different kingdom than us humans. I know we share a lot of biology together, but if you look at the aura of an animal and the aura of a human, they aren't even remotely the same. Even if it's a super intelligent animal and a not so intelligent human, it's a completely different structure, which tells you we are completely different spiritual kingdoms. And part of our job in the human is to help in the evolutionary life of the animal. When we are showing loving exchange with animals, we are literally, of course, there's the hugs and the pets and the fun time, but you are actually literally helping that animal's soul in its evolution. So the kingdoms above us are doing exactly the same thing. And it's a matter of, like you're saying, building a rapport with them, right? So they're helping in they are part of the evolutionary link. And yes, we do have to realize there are greater intelligences than ourselves. We are not as good as it gets, so to speak, but we are in a process of becoming more splendid. We are still evolving. We are, as many have said, we're a work in progress as a humanity, and that's true. We have far more potential than we're actually fully tapping yet. Everyone's talking about the excitement of AI, but we got to remember AI is not the key. It's about our intelligence. It's about raising the frequency of our awareness so that we can be more in tune with those great angelic beings. And if artificial intelligence helps spur that quest for greater knowledge and greater intelligence, great. But it is a tool. And that's all that it is, nothing more. There's nothing more brilliant than our own consciousness, nothing more amazing than what we're fully capable of becoming. So yes, we need to. Now you hit on another very important key, the higher self. So we have this beautiful auric field that interpenetrates and surrounds us, and it's many colors. I mean, the aura is more involved in the physical body. It is a whole anatomy to the aura. But above us, above the auric shell, so to speak, there is this chakra, and that literally is your higher self, the point, the higher self point. And what happens is when the inspiration, the guidance is coming down, it's coming through that higher self. But as we're suggesting here, to get in touch with the higher self, you have to reach up to it. So in other words, if I'm steeped in my angers or sorrows or frustrations or whatever's going on right now, I'm people don't realize that's creating energies that are not so wonderful. Anger comes through as a dirty, dark red. Worry comes through as a debilitating gray. These are not energies you want to have in your auric field. And the more you can clear those energies out of you, the more you can bring in that connection to your higher self. Think of it like a satellite in space. It's above the Earth atmosphere, so it can get the signals very, very, very clear and then send them down to you.
I also mentioned our perception and how this has a very powerful effect in forming our reality. For me, whenever I was in a negative state, when I viewed things in a negative light, when things weren't going so good in my life, the energy seemed to come back, and it was like a perpetual cycle that I was stuck in. And the more I focused on it, the more it manifested in my life in very negative ways. And I interview hundreds of people who have had quote unquote paranormal or contact experiences. And I've made an observation in very large part, it seems that there are people who have negative paranormal experiences that coincide with their perception of the world, with negative experiences that they're having in their own lives, with
Right.
relationships they're having. And it seems to attract some of the possible negative intelligences out there. Would you agree?
Exactly. Exactly. Like attracts like.
Mm.
Exactly said. So that means you've got to get control of your mind. You cannot fall. Look, we all have these dark moments we go. It's just part of human nature, human experience. We're gonna go through these moments, the dark night of the soul, those kinds of things. But the point is, especially now that you were more aware, like you said, when sometimes when you're in the dark state, you're not even aware you're in your dark state, you're just in it, right? But when somehow you get that objectivity to say, well, wait a minute, exactly like you said, well, not only am I thinking dark, but now it's starting to, all these things are starting to show up in my life. My thinking is becoming what's manifesting in my outer world. When we become aware of that, then we say, gee, I created this. Well, if I created the darkness, why can't I create the light? So we can, many of us don't have a lot of mental discipline. We get caught up in the mental train of thought, and we don't realize we can redirect that mental current on more positive channels. And that can change that's the fundamental key to start changing your life. And then in our work we work with the aura because it also takes power to make change. And that power has to be in your auric field first. So if I've weakened my aura through too much distress and worry and frustration and anger, I have to clear it out, but I also have to build up the auric power so that when I do go out and initiate this, it will manifest. The divine law says if it's in your aura, it will show up in your life. And if it's not in your aura, it just means you haven't made it happen. When we were living in Los Angeles for years, there were, struggling actors and writers, and they would come and say, well, gee, am I going to make it in this business? I'm going to, and then sometimes the inspiration was, well, you haven't built enough power of that success. You need to build up your talents further, do the things you need to do, and that success will come. But if we're here and we want to be here, well, you got to build it up to get to there. So there's that determination. A lot of people quit too soon. A few rough things come in their life. They say, I'm bail, I'm out of it. And that's just the start of the journey to get there. If you really think something's valuable and this is worth your time, don't give up on it. Stick with it.
Right on. Let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with the Seven Spiritual Arts Institute. Tell us a little bit about what you offer there, and then maybe we can break down some of the categories and talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we do have the nonprofit Spiritual Arts Institute. We've been doing online since 2006, long before the COVID era. And we also have a center here in San Diego area. And our foundational program is what you just said, the Seven Spiritual Arts Program. And they focus each on a different mystical art. So one of the arts is the aura and meditation. So everything we do at the Institute is meditating with divine light. That's the foundational thing, because that's what initiates all the changes. And there's so many beautiful ways to do this. It's really like an art form, this type of meditation. Another one is healing. I mean, every one of us is going to need healing. Really, just means change. You are transforming a weakened condition in your life to a place of strength, whether it's illness into health, sadness into joy, poverty into wealth. That healing process, it's not just a thing to do, it's a state of consciousness. We often like to quote was a great spiritual healers. I don't know if you know Joel Goldsmith from the 1950s and 60s. And he had this amazing ability when he prayed for others. They were generally feeling a lot better, you know.
Mhm.
And he said, what I do is I get into a state of consciousness where illness does not exist. There's that illusion again, right? Now, it took him a long time to build that up. He said, I had to work a long time before I got there. So healing is another important one. Then we talked a little bit about the karma and reincarnation. This life we're in is a chapter in our book of life. We've had a rich history before this incarnation. We have more lifetimes yet to be lived. And every one of us comes into this earth with unfinished business. So in addition to whatever else we've got to get done here, we've got to resolve the not so good karmas from the past and amplify the good ones. You know, sometimes people are born with talents, they do nothing with them. That talent was not accidental. You earned that talent. So that's a huge study. When I really undertook the study of and got into my own past lives, I was forever changed. I just realized, well, this is not all there is. You know, okay, I'm going to do my best in this incarnation, but it's a much bigger picture. Then another one is the one that you brought up so beautifully on the spirit. We call it the spiritual hierarchy. There is a hierarchical order of divine loving beings that guide and direct us under God from the other side. And our job is they're already helping us, but the goal is if you can connect with them in a more conscious way, yes, of course, that rapport becomes much more beautiful. Now, we're not pawns. We're not just, robots and whatever they say, that's what we do. No, they're not here to do it for us, but they're helping us to empower so we can do it for ourselves. So that's another art all by itself. And then there's one, this is actually, we're working a book on consciousness right now, understanding the spiritual dimensions of the mind and how that, and also your emotional nature. That's the whole key there. And then we have one on, we call it the spiritual keys of living. That's another spiritual art because we've got to be careful. Truth is not truth until it lives in your heart. Information is meaningless unless you're doing something about it. So how do you live the truth that you know? I mean, we've been hearing some great truths through the great sages for centuries. The question is, are we living those truths? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Is that what you're doing in your personal life? So this focuses a lot on living. You look at all the great traditions, at the bottom of every one of them is conduct of living. And we do caution people in metaphysics, because you get a lot of head knowledge, you can start to think you're kind of further ahead than you really are. Make sure whatever you're learning, you're implementing. And in the aura, the area of implementation is the heart chakra. That heart chakra, right now, everything going on in all of our lives individually is radiating a spiritual energy right in this part of us. Your career, your relationships, your finances, all of it. And then there's another art. This is kind of like the wide angle lens picture here, to look at the big picture, kind of like you started at the beginning. Well, what's the point of it? What's the point, Alfie? Why are we here on this earth? What's the big picture of it all? And it's the journey of evolution. And what we say is spiritual evolution is the soul's growth through the many dimensions of life. On the other side, it's not one dimension of life. It's many dimensions, and it's organized according to levels of consciousness, as well as being a literal place you can go to. Earth is kind of this melting pot of all these different energies of different levels, but not so on the other side. So right now, you and I, as we're talking together, our auras are vibrating to a certain level of consciousness this very minute. Now, let's say it was my time to go home today. I would take the light I've earned today, not what I had yesterday, not what I might earn tomorrow, and that would determine where I end up on the other side. It's not reward or punishment, it's like attracting like. So Barbara's great teaching was the most important thing you can do on this earth is to earn light, spiritual light, because you are taking that light with you. You're not taking your fame or fortune to the other side, but you are taking your light. So those are the arts. Those are the different studies. And we go into each one in detail. And then together you start to get this very beautiful picture of the whole again, it's a very orchestrated thing. Again, these are, if you were in the ancient mystery schools, you generally spent the rest of your life in those schools. There was just way too much to learn, and you would, whatever your potential was, you would awaken it in that. And they were beautiful places, and it's time to bring back that system of operation again in the 21st century.
You mentioned reincarnation a couple of times, and you said something interesting a minute ago that where we depart to in the afterlife is really dependent on our perception at the time of death. It really doesn't matter what happened before or what could be. It's in that moment, whenever you exit, is your headspace? Where are you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? Is that right?
Yes, although we would use the term, where are you in your auric power? So
Okay.
right now, for example, everything we're thinking radiates an energy from the mental center. Everything we're feeling radiates an energy from the emotional center. Collectively, we all have auras at different levels of development, depending how we lived our life. If we really tried to better ourselves, we did everything right, or if we lived a life of debauchery, those are going to have very different effects on the auric field.
Hmm.
One is losing light, one is gaining light. You can lose light. People think they're very clever and they're stealing and they say, hey, I got away with it. I'm so clever. I'm so cunning.
Right.
You may have been clever and you got away with it, but you did not get away with it in your aura. Stealing diminishes your power, not increases it. So remember, even if we aren't getting that pat on the back, every good thing you're doing is earning you light. And in a way, it is being seen. Your aura is brightening, and just do the right thing for the sake of
Hmm.
doing it, not because you want to get the trophy to put on your mantle, that kind of thing. So yes, so wherever we are, and the other side is such a fascinating world. Um, I don't know if you've ever studied, Yogananda, and the self-realization, but Yogananda was an Indian Swami. He was one of the first to come to the United States, started a big a big school here, and he was very devoted to his teacher, who stayed in India. And when his teacher died, Yogananda went into great grief. And one time the teacher appeared and started talking about what he was doing on the other side. He was talking about the different dimensions he was going to. And I loved one quote. He was talking about his journey in the astral worlds. And he said, the whole physical universe hangs like a basket on a tree of the astral universe. Meaning, as vast as we're learning now about how vast physical life is, it's nothing compared to the vastness of the spiritual life. Not nothing, but it's small by
Mm.
comparison. So let's put things in their proper perspective. One of the things I'm hoping in the days ahead is, as we're actually starting to understand the physical world better, which of course we are, is it will urge us, a little bit like what you said at the beginning of our conversation, it will spur people to ask the bigger spiritual questions. Because, when some of these teachings were first established, the world thought, well, we're at the center of the universe. It was a much smaller conception of the universe. And now, if we're looking at the vastness of it all, we say, well, how do we fit in this? We're not even the speck of dust on the speck of dust. We hear these inconceivable numbers and scale and size, and it can make us feel insignificant. But if we realize we're precious in the sight of the divine, every single one of us comes to this earth with a purpose, and every one of us is indispensable to the divine plan of life, and the universe is built on love. Many people forget that. They think it's again about up here. Every step on the path upward is paved in love. So another way to see where you are in your own spiritual growth is, where is your genuine love expression? When Barbara would do her aura readings, that was one of the first energies she looked for, the energy of love, because it kind of told her where that person was in their spiritual development.
Well, let's talk more about auras, what they can tell us, if it's possible for anyone to observe an aura, and how we can use that to heal ourselves.
Right. Well, that's of course the foundation of all of our work. Uh, Let me start with this: how we use it. Maybe that's a good quick orientation.
Sure.
And I often give this example of, okay, let's say very, very, very practical thing. You're looking for ask for a raise at your job. It's long overdue. You certainly deserve it, but it hasn't been given to you. And for some reason, every time you want to go into the boss's office to ask for the raise, you just don't do it. And maybe just be confessed, you chicken out. Okay. Now, what's going on in that situation in the aura? So in the aura, the energetic power of confidence, those people that are true doers, they have a lot of gold in their auric field. That's a very dynamic, outgoing energy. It has nothing to do with your sex. It's just, a woman can have as much gold as a male, and a male can have as much love as a woman. This is, we're talking about spiritual powers in us. Now, if I'm fearful, oh gosh, if I go in there, maybe they'll fire me rather than give me the rate. If I go, I can create all sorts of scenarios in my head.
Mhm.
I create a gray, debilitating energy. It's not a pleasant color. The color of fear, which kind of has a paralyzing effect. It makes you not want to do anything.
Mhm.
Now, let's just say of your own volition, say, come on, get that out of your head. You got to go out there and do it. Okay, you can slowly build up, attract that gold energy. But of course, it takes a lot of guts to do that. Now, another technique that can help is you can meditate with the gold. You can call on the golden ray of wisdom, light, and confidence, bring it into your auric field through meditation, and then use it. In this case, go out, ask for that raise. And you're going to notice, gosh, it was a little easier to do it than I thought. I mean, even regardless of the outcome. And that builds in your aura for the next time. We had a doctor in one of our classes, and his issue was compassion. He said, I see so many patients every day. I'll be frank with you, I don't have a lot of compassion for them. I just see in out, in out, in out, And sometimes doctors, I think, do see their patients like petri dishes rather than people. So he had to work with the energies of compassion, which comes through as a pink light. He did. And he reported at the end of one of the courses, my God, not only is my practice doing better, it's busier than ever because he saw a weak link and he corrected it. So that's the foundation of our work, really, in a nutshell. Every
Excellent.
part of our life can be, now, even if it's a strength, let's say you already came in with a talent for painting. Okay, you're a pretty good painter, but you're not like this super professional painter. And you want to take your natural painting skills and okay, you can draw on the creative powers to take the talent you have that's here and take it to here. So this is in every part of our life that we can enhance and develop and make stronger. Now, it doesn't mean one meditation suddenly, the tide is turned. But if you're persistent and if you stay with it, you will see success. Another very quick thing. What was so fascinating when I first learned this is that in the aura, there's an energy of prosperity. Whether it's financial or in other life, it comes through as a turquoise light.
Mm.
Now, if I'm chronically worried about money, oh my God, I can't make my ends meet, you're creating what we call the consciousness of poverty. Well, how can you manifest wealth if what you're, like you just said before, if I'm entertaining the dark all day long, why am I surprised that suddenly the prosperity is not coming in? We've heard of people that came into towns penniless and they amassed wealth in a short period of time. They understood the laws of prosperity. When I was first working with Barbara, I was still in the showbiz world, and that's kind of a feast and famine. You're sometimes working all the time or not at all. And I was at the moment not working at all. And she, in her casual way, looked at my heart chakra, the world affairs, and said, oh, there's a beautiful turquoise light coming out there. Now, at that moment, there was no job. I mean, I was looking for work, but there was no job. 2 weeks later, I had the most lucrative job offer I'd had up to that point. The energy was there. As long as I was doing my part, then, it didn't happen immediately, but it did happen.
Now, I mentioned if we as individuals can view our own auras. I know they have aura photography. Is there any other ways that we
Well,
can know what is surrounding us in our aura?
okay, so a couple things. We've got to remember the aura isn't physical. Okay, so there is no camera that can picture the aura. I'll be just have to do a little because I feel the need to do that. When the first book came out, like 25 years ago, first edition, everybody that was doing that work wanted Barbara's endorsement.
Mhm.
Clairvoyant, about the. So we asked, well, show us the science,
Mm-hmm.
show us the document, and none of them did. None of them, right? And then one at the conference, I tracked down one of the leaders, the initial innovators, and I just basically cornered him and said, no, it's not an aura camera, it's a spectrometer, and it's been programmed to look like an aura.
Mm.
And now I notice on the website it says in fine print, this is not actually taking a picture of the aura. No camera can do that because he had some legal issues that were coming up with that.
Okay.
Okay. So I know it's kind of fun. It's kind of like when you wear the mood rings, and okay, so the biochemistry changes and it affects it. That I'm not saying you can't get anything out of it, but it's not a picture of your aura. Believe me, if there was any way to actually photograph an aura, science would have been on it years ago.
Right.
And we would have been on it right away. Now, there was one attempt that kind of, I would call it, took a shadow picture of an aura.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the original Kirlian photography from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s in Russia, right? And that was fascinating because, for example, well, you probably know, but in case your listeners don't, so they would take, let's say, a freshly cut leaf, they'd put it on a photographic plate and run a gentle electrical current through it, and there would be these kind of like flare-like, aura-like energies, depending on what was going on with the leaf. Was it a shriveled up leaf? Was it a healthy? Was it however it was there. Now, not every time, but sometimes they would take the freshly cut leaf, cut it in half, so it was the half of the leaf. They'd put it on the photographic plate, and when they ran the current through it, it ran through the whole leaf.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in our terminology, every physical thing has its etheric counterpart. My hand, this is my physical hand. I have an etheric hand interpenetrating this. God forbid, if anything were to happen with the hand, the physical hand may go, but not the etheric. So for that moment, they had cut the physical leaf, but the etheric energy was still there, and the electrical current picked it up because the etheric is affected by physical activity. So I won't say there's no capacity to kind of understand this, but I don't know what happened to that study. It was such a great study, and then it segued into this other stuff, but that was the genuine study that was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, we all have, the other thing we've got to realize is we're all, not only are we not physical, we're a soul, we have a spiritual composition. So you have spirit eyes, I have spirit eyes. We all have the spiritual apparatus this very minute.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a lot of people, it's what we call latent. It's not fully active. But it also doesn't mean it's not fully dormant. The spiritual senses are picking up right now, and the most common expression of that is feeling a person's vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're feeling or vibe in a place that you're in, you're tuning into that energy. Even though it's not a rational explanation, why does this place suddenly feel like this? You're picking up the spiritual energies through your spiritual senses. Now, we also like to say that seeing auras is a byproduct of the evolutionary process. So as you naturally evolve your soul, those gifts start to open up, but they open up in a way when you're ready, because believe me, you could go insane if you're not ready for it. So this is not for the meek-hearted. You have to be ready for this. But it doesn't mean you can't work with it. So what we tell people, all right, if you got really angry today, you probably have some of that dirty red in your aura, but get to work and clear it out. Do the principles, and the relief and the joy you feel by not feeling that way anymore is the validation of the work. And yes, of course, those that have, sometimes you say people have sort of a natural clairvoyance. They don't see the whole aura, but they'll see colors. That often does accentuate as you're working with the light. So that can naturally happen. But yeah, if we had to wait to see the aura to work with it, well, we may be waiting a long time, and there's no reason to wait.
Last few minutes we have, I'd love to get your thoughts on where we're at as a collective spiritually, where we're headed, some of the events that have unfolded that have led to this seeming awakening amongst many people. Do you think that there is something special about this time period? There's an emerging consensus amongst many people who have spiritual intuition, psychic abilities, remote viewers, connected to some sort of other intelligence that we are headed into an era of more prosperity, at least than we've experienced in our recent human history. There may be times of turmoil that we have to get through before we achieve that, but ultimately, that there is something emerging that is going to be better for humanity.
Well, you're saying it beautifully. Absolutely. What we like to say is the world's getting better, not worse.
Hmm.
If you look at things statistically over the last 150 years, in just about every area of human activity, things are better. It's ironic that we have a little bit of a pessimistic point of view at the moment. We think it's getting worse because what we say is these are growing pains. Okay, we're here to grow individually, but we're also here to grow collectively. Civilization is going through a transformation. And it is heading absolutely to what you said, to a better day. There's more prosperity already on the earth than ever before, and it's going to increase. Now, yes, it may be unbalanced right now. I'm not saying there, like you said, there can be very, very real problems here, and there are. But overall, things are getting better, not worse, which means you've got to grab that brass ring. Because if I get skeptical or discouraged, I'm less likely to want to pursue things. Whereas if I realize there's greater opportunity now, yes, I may have to work hard to get at it, not fall under the diversionary rabbit holes and all that kind of stuff. I can achieve more now than I ever could. So the opportunities are there. We do have to be, they're a little more difficult to navigate at the moment. But what we like to say is don't buy into the gloom and doom scenarios. That's not the way the higher sees the planet right now. We are not at the new day yet, obviously. And yes, unfortunately, hopefully that doesn't happen, but there could be some, troubled times before we get there, but those times will pass. The goal is to stay close to the light, stay close to what you are. And Gandhi said it so beautifully, be the change you want to see in the world. Don't be a passive player in all this. Do your best. Any way you can. You're contributing.
One more thing going back to reincarnation. Earlier, you said that we all come in with unfinished business. In your understanding, do you think that unfinished business goes back to our original incarnation and we are perpetually trying to achieve that? And if we do achieve that, do we get to go home without having to do this again?
You are funny. That was when we used to do the karma workshops. That was the number one. People would say, you know what? Whatever I have to do, I ain't coming back here again. Look, we've been here many times, and we'll be here again. There's nothing wrong with reincarnating. It's a perfectly natural process. Where it gets frustrating is if you don't finish what you had the opportunity to do in this lifetime, then it gets tougher in the next one. So take care of business here. Now, yes, eventually, just like any school, you graduate. The Hindu mystics talked about getting off the wheel of samsara, off the reel of reincarnation. We call it earning the crown of life. So that eventually does happen, but that's a long, that's a beautiful road. There's so much. The way to think of it is there's so much to express, so much of you, your talents, your abilities, your loving nature. Let those things develop themselves, and everything else will take care. But as far as unfinished business, I don't want to leave on a downer note, but sometimes that tough person in your life is your karma, not all the time. So when a situation isn't so wonderful, before you just say, I don't have anything to do with this, say, well, what's my lesson here? Is there something I'm learning in this situation?
Mm.
Especially with people close to you, whether it's family members, spouses, children. No question you've known these people in the past. And they could be wonderful experiences or they could have been some challenging. But I will say, having gone through this process myself, there's no more, it's, you can study everything, but until you release those karmic chains, as they call them, you're still bound. And there's nothing more freeing than resolving your karma, facing that karma and taking care of it. And it's again done in love. The idea is to make you a better person, to give you a second chance at life.
What would be some of the most powerful methods that you'd recommend for a person to connect with that karma, even if it's in a past life?
Well, the the saying goes, don't worry about finding your karma will find you.
Okay.
So when that situation comes up, or something that is inexplicable, um, take all the spiritual principles you've already learned and apply them in this person. Let's say if it's a person or a situation, and look at repeating patterns in your life, especially if they're kind of a discouraging nature. Why can't I get the job I want? I went here, 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 here. What is going on? So you've got to step back a moment, realize there may be a bigger process going on. Look more carefully at what you're doing. Because having counseled many people for many years now, I see often their mindset isn't in the right place. And they're wondering why things are not happening the way they want, because they're consumed by other things. They're not even seeing things clearly because they're reacting to what's coming to them. So so again, this is a big topic, and there's no quick answer to this. But
Right.
all I'm trying to share is, don't. Have you ever feel like you got at the short end of the lollipop? Just remember, it doesn't matter where you are. Karma's not an end point; it's a starting point. And if there's anything in your life you feel you deserved or whatever and you didn't get, you can make that happen, right? Whether it's having the family you weren't born into, the prosperity you weren't born into, the opportunity you weren't born into, you can make those things happen by your own efforts. And you're going to feel so good about it because you said, you know what? I put every brick in that wall. There's a tremendous sense of satisfaction with that.
Right on. Dimitri, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I definitely love to talk more in the future. Before
Yeah.
we close out, let the audience know how they can find out more about you, your website, the Seven Spiritual Arts Institute.
Yes, yes. So you can go to spiritualarts.org. That's our website. Our books change. The new one, Change Your Way, Change Your Life, is of course all the bookstores. That goes over the whole meditation process I just described today. We have a bunch of other books too. And we have classes and workshops and all of that. And I am doing some touring, traveling this year. I'll be in Chicago and I'll be at Omega in September doing the whole, actually, Change Your Aura course. So if you're ever in Southern California, come by and say hello. You too, all
Excellent.
right? If you're ever in Dubai this
Oh,
way.
yeah, definitely. Dimitri, thank you so much. Like I said, I'd love to talk again in the future. And until next time, everyone have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. We'll see you then. Hello, friends. At some point in our journeys, we all need guidance and direction. One thing I've learned along the way is that there are many ways to connect with our soul mission. Jennifer Halcame offers over 30 years experience with intuitive tarot, life coaching, and energy and attachment clearing. She helps others with energetic blocks become aligned with their soul mission. She offers one-on-one or online Zoom sessions, and cases are assessed on an individual basis, and she works with everyone truly in need. You can email her now to set up a free consultation at jenniferhalcame@gmail.com or through Facebook Messenger. All those links are right in the description. Hello, friends. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Have you tried intermittent fasting, low carb or ketogenic diets, cutting calories, and exercising more with no success? Book a free intro call with my friend Christian Yordanov to see how he can help you. He is a health author and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. He was on the show recently to discuss his latest book on longevity, How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1. He understands that for many people, excess weight gain and weight loss resistance is much more complex than calories in, calories out. You may be having a hard time shedding the pounds because of hormonal and metabolic imbalances that won't respond to simply eating less and moving more. In our modern environment full of obesogenic chemicals and endocrine disruptors, xenoestrogens, and persistent organic pollutants, as well as unprecedented levels of stress, A more sophisticated approach is needed to help people like yourself achieve long-lasting results. Christian's going to help you lose weight in a safe, sustainable, and stress-free manner. He doesn't use severe calorie restriction, low-carb or ketogenic diets, intermittent or water fasting, or intense exercise regimens with his clients. Instead, his focus is on improving diet quality, addressing hormonal and metabolic imbalances, reducing stress, and helping you build the habits and lifestyle that will allow you to achieve your body composition goals and transform your health. In addition, he's going to help you boost your detoxification system because this is critical to get right before you start losing a significant amount of weight. Christian will help you get healthy to lose weight. That is the right way to do it. This is not a quick fix, but a comprehensive strategy that'll help you achieve your desired body composition in a safe, free, and stress-free manner. If you are done with the fat diets and intermittent starvation and are ready for real solutions, the support you need is available. Click that link in the description to learn more and book your free call with Christian to see how he can help you. Make sure you mention FKN when booking, and he will add extra free consultation sessions to your package.